Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? I hope you're well. Hope you're having an amazing day. Hope you are doing well. So let's talk about it. Seeds to systems. I am Dr. Tammy, strategist, consultant, educator, most of all. I help you move in the direction of more and prepare for what's next. So I want to just one say hello and say hello to me in the chat. You can say where you who you are, where you're joining me from. Let me know if this is your first time joining me. So I haven't been live in a minute, and I thought I'd come on. I was actually prepping for our discussions this coming week in the book club. And I came across something, just reviewing some of the previous chapters that we've discussed. And, it's kind of one of those things like you see it the first time and you don't really think anything of it. But the second time, something new appears. And that's one thing I love about language, reading, and words is that depending on the lens from which you look at them, and the lens that you have cleaned off, so to speak, that day is the lens for which you um, see them and interpret them. And so I was going through our book, and if you're not familiar, and if you're not reading with us, join us. You can still join us. We still have a week or so that we'll be discussing, although I have selected our latest book. And I will be starting announcing it on Monday, so of the week, this coming week, because I know this one is going to linger. We have another week discussion, and we have our roundtable discussion, and so this one is going to go over just a little bit the way I've planned it out, but November into December to the start of our break, we'll start a new book. So I have that and I'll announce it. And I think it's good for the season. It's like a good reminder for the season. But this is the one that we're actually reading right now. Power Moves, Ignite Your Confidence and Become a Force by Sarah Jakes Roberts. So this is our current book. And I was going through it because we start on Monday, chapter 12, I believe. And so I was looking at some of the other chapters, like chapters 4 through that. And of course, I didn't get far. I got to chapter 4 and I thought, I'll come on. And I will say that I'm coming on live briefly because I think I'm going to explore this really in depth in a future episode um, of the podcast. So you'll have to get the full gist on the podcast. So, yes, I say it like I'm not, but it's already done, it's already planned. But anyway, so the in-depth version of what I'm going to mention today is going to be on the podcast. Now, let me just say that today is probably more questions, and then I'll share my thoughts on possible ways to view it. But in our book, Power Moves, there's chapter 4 that talks about the ecosystem of you. And in this chapter, and many of the chapters, she asks several questions. And she's asking questions and really thoughtful questions that get you to think about whatever the chapter's about. And this one is ecosystems. And in one line in the book, she talks about seeds. If you have been following me for even a little bit, you know that I have the book 76 Seeds for this season, the Reap More book. And it says 76 Seeds for this season is the subtitle. And I talk about seeds quite often. And when I'm talking about seeds, I'm talking about those things that you plant that can grow and become things. And I talk about it being quotes and things that are related to mindset. And so when she mentioned that line in the book, and if I can find it, I'll read it. I didn't, I don't think I marked it because it was one of those things that you see, but you just kind of keep going and go over it. But when she mentioned that, and this chapter is talking about seeds, I thought about, that is exactly what I do. That is exactly what my platform is about. Is starting with the seeds and creating systems that help those seeds come to harvest. And a lot of what she talks about in this chapter is so related to what I think about that. And of course, now that I'm looking for it, I'm trying not to look down too much. I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Seeds are introduced that make them possible. And I think that's the only time she mentions it. Like in this chapter, that is, like, she explores it differently, but she talks about seeds are introduced that make them possible, talking about systems. And I'm thinking, so the them is the systems, right? And I'm talking like, hello, that is so Dr. Tammy, because that's what I do. Is we talk about mindset. Like, I always start with mindset and talking about mindset and what mindset is and how we approach it, how we can change our mindset and influence our mindset. We talk about those things. Oh my goodness, I see a friend here. Hey, Frazier. How are you from across the pond? How are you? It has been a while. It's been a minute, although I jump into your broadcast quite often. So, to keep up with you. So, thank you for hopping in today and saying hello to me. I appreciate that. But a lot of what I talk about is talking about the seeds and talking about um, these are seeds for the soul. These are things that uplift you, inspire you, that get you moving in the direction of more. So you can prepare for what's next. The systems. And in here she talks about systems. And so I want to read some questions she poses. And then I'll talk a little bit about what the podcast will be about, because the podcast will go more in depth. But she asked a few questions, and I'm reading from our book, our October selection for the book club, Power Moves. But she asked a few questions. What if the systems we once needed are the systems that are now oppressing? Is it possible that the system that once served you well has now become the enemy to your destiny? And I love that because I am here, and I put this under Dr. Tammy Talks rather than the book club, because the book club will talk about it. So join our community. I put the links above or below this video wherever you're watching it, so you can join our community. It is not on Facebook. I do post a few things on Facebook. We do have a group on Facebook, but the actual discussions occur off of Facebook and somewhere else. And so for those of you that were joined originally a part of that group, know that we are on a separate app. And so I encourage you to hop over and join the discussion. So we'll talk about it in the group. But one thing that when I read this, I thought about, some of the things that I'm always talking about. And I love that I can use her words to support what I do. So this may be a little selfish in that way. But because what I encourage you to do is to always, it's like a cycle. Like, your work with me is not just you do these things and that's it. No, it's this cycle. Like, you start over. Like the 5 phases, you go through them all the way to harvest on one thing, because you have to implement those systems that help you get there. But then you have to reevaluate, you got to readjust, you got to plan again, do a new planning based on what the next level looks like for you, and then you start that again and you do it a couple of times, right? Or until you are where you really want to be. And that's kind of this, like, sometimes the systems that was once serving us served us, but they're no longer serving us anymore. So what do you have to do? You have to reevaluate. And I think in this chapter she talks about finding the virus and looking at some of those same old systems, and she talks about an ecosystem and how we and our lives are an ecosystem. How not only is it one big system, but there's all these other systems at work as well. And and I think that that's kind of how we think about it, whether it's your professional life, your family, all those things are a part of that system. And so I like that she talks about that and she goes through that, because I think it really highlights to how we should be thinking about what we're doing, what we want to do, our goals, how we want to plan, and looking at those systems. So, so she talks about the ecosystem, and she says the recognition of how our individuality interconnects with ecosystems of our families, our friends, our communities, and professional ambitions, right? Helps us to understand why staying in our comfort zone is so appealing. Now, listen, can I just tell you about the aha? That even in that sentence, I talk about a lot of things, and I know some people think that I don't know where you think I get it from. It's here. But it's interesting how sometimes you need this confirmation or affirmation, something affirming what you know to be true. And that is something that I talked about before. So and I will try to put it in the comments of wherever this video is, because I want you to see the episode that I did on zones. And I talked about the zones going from comfort zone to growth zone, comfort, fear, learning, and the growth zone, and how those zones we progress through. And so I'll talk about that. But much of the systems that we have keep us in our comfort zone. What are some of those things that will help us get uncomfortable? Right. And so I think it's a time for us to start thinking about how can we become uncomfortable, because when uncomfortable, you then reveal the fears that you have, put you into a place of learning and then a place of growth. And that's kind of the progression. And I talk about my zone defense, and that's something that I go through with my mentorship community. That's what I go through when we're strategizing and masterminding around how we're going to achieve, because it's one thing to say you're going to do something, but you have to put systems in place. You have to put a strategy in place in order to accomplish it, because then you have to put the work behind it, because faith without work is dead. So therefore we have to put the work, right? We got to put in, you got to put in the work. In order to do that, you need a plan. It helps if you have a plan, because then it's not overwhelming. Then you can go through it, you can do it. It helps make it a little easier to figure out what is your plan of attack. And so I really like those that progress, like to think about it that way. The seeds, the zones, and the systems in order to reveal and get to where you want to be and how you want to get there, or sustain it, right? How you want to sustain it, because that's a whole nother thing, right? Because once you get there, you got to keep going. Like ideally you don't regress, right? You progress. So anyway, I really like that, and I wanted to come on and just say, you know, what are the systems that you are leaning on when you're in a place of transition and growth? And are those systems still serving you? Do you need to look at it, readjust, plan again, and create new systems for what you want to do? Because if you're not doing that, are you really growing? Are you really changing? I am the catalyst for change. And so that's what I hope that I am for you, is to get you to think about what is next for me? How do I get there? And what do I need to do in order to get there? What is that strategy, that plan, that system I need to create to get there? Right. Um, so yeah, so that's just something I like to do. And so I like to share with you. So I hope you'll join me on this journey. When you deprive yourself of a position of honesty and authenticity, you rob yourself of freedom. And y'all know I've had this freedom theme for 2024 that looks like it's going to just fall into 2025. Not only of the mind and the physical, the emotional, is this idea of freedom and liberation. And so, yeah, that will be a whole thing in itself as well. But I just wanted to pop on and ask you those few questions and know that just because you got it done doesn't mean that you didn't come undone in the process, which means just because you accomplished something, just because you are accomplishing something, doesn't mean it was easy. Doesn't mean it was smooth. And I don't want you to think that when you're working with me and when you're hanging out in my spaces. Like some of these things won't be easy. And I have so many clients who just stop. Like they can't sustain that level of intensity and thinking about and really addressing those things that they need to address. And so I want you to know like this process is layered. The things that we do is layered. It's not just one thing. And I don't look at things from one place. That's not how my brain works. I apologize if that offends you or makes you uncomfortable. But because I look at it from different lenses and I look at it all the way around, it takes us a minute to do that. And it takes us some time to progress through it, but you'll get there. And for all of us, it's a different journey. Some of us is faster than others. But in order for me to take you through my zone defense and really get you to where you want to go and where you want to be, you've got to be committed. You've got to be in this to win it. Apparently, that's the saying that keeps coming off my tongue. I don't know if I'm reverting back to the 90s, but some of these things that I think I grew up knowing and learning are now like back in my awareness. So I just want to encourage you that if you're not reading with us, to read with us. If you're not hanging out with me in spaces where we can have some deeper discussions around these things that I just bring up and throw out there and don't really go into, let's do that. Because I do like to do it where we can have a conversation. I like for people to talk with me. I don't like to talk at people, so I like for people to talk to me. I do. I even in my class, you know, it's like pulling teeth to get my students to talk with me. But yeah, I'm hoping that you will take some time to click the link, join us, read with us as we finish this book. We move into the next book because I want to talk about the seeds to the systems. What does that look like? Because I think if you don't have a complete view, like I tell a lot of my the people that are in my circle, and I tell people sometimes, you know, I remember when we were little, for example, you know, you pick up a book or you have a reading, the first thing you want to do is to see how long it is. You want to see what this looks like what's the length, because you have to mentally prepare. You have to really think about like how long you got to sit here, what kind of stamina do I need to take breaks, what kind of plan I need to put in place so that way I'm successful and finish that book, that reading, that article, whatever it is. Since I'm a reading professor, we do a lot of reading, and so I remember in when I was young, teachers not wanting you to do that, teachers not encouraging you to see how long it is. And I remember when I taught high school, that was one of the things, part of our test taking strategy. That was granted. Now I'm showing how long I've been teaching. Granted, that's when tests were paper and pencil. Now they're done on the computer. They do all their standardized testing and things on the computer. But back in that time, they had like hard copies. And one of the initial things I told them to do is to flip the pages. If it wasn't sealed for that section, look and see how long it is. Look and see how long the reading is. That's the same thing we got to do when we're trying to reach our goals, when we're trying to bring things into fruition, because you need to know what the mindset you need to get there. You need to know what kind of stamina this is going to require and what kind of systems we're going to have to put in place. What is that action plan you need to put in place in order to be successful and finish it and accomplish it? And what does that look like? Because if you just have one of those and not the other, it's not going to work. Sorry. Goals sound great, But if you don't have your mindset together, if you don't have some sort of action plan, let me back up. Back it up, Dr. Tammy. If you don't have your mindset right together, if you're not feeding that and always doing that ongoing through the entire process, you got to do that. The second thing I should have said is visualize where you want to end up. Like a lot of this is really this law of attraction, this idea that you are allowing these things to come to you. And so you have to be able to visualize what it is you want. You have to be able to create that action plan. That's why I'm here to help you with all of these. That action plan. And then you have to execute. Like you've got to put in the work. If you're not putting in the work, then what are we doing? We just writing things on paper. We've got to put in the work. And the work is where some people stop right before their breakthrough. And you've got to keep going. You can't stop. You keep going. That way, then you can do those things you want to do with it. If you want to impact the world, if you want to change something, or a group or something that you're doing, if you want to donate funds to something, if you want to monetize what it is that you think you're called to do, that you've been commissioned to do, then we you can't get there if you don't get some of these other things in place. So anyway, I can go on about that, but I won't, because I know that if you look at enough of my content, I have, and we're going into that deeper in the mentorship community. So I invite you to join that as well, to read with us, to find out what I have that serves you, that can be of benefit to you on your journey toward more. That's all I ask. Is for you to check it out, and if that's something you want to do, I even have videos out there. You can go to my YouTube, watch some videos of some connections and conversations when I used to do that, or Dr. Tammy Talks, some previous episodes. You can do all of that as well on this journey. But I do encourage you to think about, what does it look like from seeds to systems, from mindset to the execution of your action plan? What does that look like? So I hope you're having an amazing weekend. I will be back. I'm sure. I'm trying to do these a little more often. I'm going into this season where I'm going to go back to the things that I love. And y'all know I love live streaming. I love my podcasts. I love our book discussions and those type of things. So yeah. So I invite you to join me and hang out with me and find out how I can help you. If you're live or on the replay and you haven't said hello to me, say hello to me. If you've gotten this far, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me. And know that we're reading in the month of October 2024. We're reading Power Moves by Sarah Jakes Roberts. We have our November/December selection, because it's going to go into right before the break. We usually take some time off for the holidays and the new year. And so then we pick back up in January. So this will the next read will kind of flow over into December. And so I will be announcing that next week on Monday. I guess that's the 28th. It's Monday, October 28th. So I'll be announcing it from then. So you'll see our next read, but I'm hoping you'll pick this one up. You'll read this one with us, and you'll join in the community on our Mighty Network group there, and join us in the discussions, because I like to hear your perspectives and thoughts on some of the things she's saying. Like I said, for some reason, out of all the things that I latched onto in this book, this week, I latched on to what connected to my work as the catalyst. And the seeds to systems is it. Now, of course, I created that title. She didn't connect it like that, but that's kind of what I do. Seeds to the systems. So that way you can get what you need. And then we'll bring in the other people that can help you further on your journey. So that's kind of how that works. I am Dr. Tammy. I am a strategist. Seeds to systems. I help you move in the direction of more and prepare for what's next. And I hope to see you in the group. So check out the link. Go check it out. Join. The reading group is free. The mentorship is a subscription, but you can join both if you like. Join the one that serves you. I'll see you soon. Y'all have an amazing week.